after 3:30 now. I would suggest we get started since we have a quorum, and hopefully Nathan and Jeff can join in when they can.
Okay. Sure thing. All right. At this point, I will get. Sorry, my dog was shaking. All right. Welcome and good afternoon. I would like to welcome everyone to the April 4th meeting of the Art and Public Places Committee. Pursuant to Government Code Section 54953E and the recommendation of the Health Officer of the County of Sonoma, Art and Public Places Committee members will be participating in this meeting via Zoom webinar. Members of the public can participate in the Zoom meeting by following the link or dialing in. Sorry, recording secretary, did I miss anything about how the public can access our meeting today?
You covered almost everything. If you are dialing in, you can just press *9 to raise your hand, and when you do, the committee will be able to hear you.
Great, thank you. At this time, can you please take roll call?
Certainly, I'm actually in the process of, oh, there we go. Chair Kiefer.
Present.
Vice Chair Jones Carter.
Present.
Member Baumgartner.
Present.
Member Fuentes.
Present.
Member Nathanson.
Present. Hi, everybody.
Let the record reflect that Member Sayers has indicated he will not be able to attend today's meeting, and that we do anticipate Member Asdarian joining a bit late.
Great, thank you. Moving on to item 3, public comments. This is the time when any person may address matters not listed on this agenda, but are within the subject matter of the jurisdiction. The public may comment on agenda items when the item is called. Each speaker is allowed 3 minutes. Recording secretary, at this time, do we have any general public comments?
We have no raised hands at this time.
Okay. Next up, we have item 4, approval of minutes. Today we have 2 meeting minutes to approve. First off, we have the January 10th, 2022 special meeting. And for clarification, do I need to take each of these as a separate item?
Yes, please.
Okay. First off, we have the January 10th meeting minutes. They were distributed to our committee. I believe everyone had an opportunity to review. Does anyone have any additions or modifications to make on this? Seeing none, no hands raised, I would like to ask our committee to vote on this. Can I get a motion to approve the meeting minutes as stated for the record?
I make a motion that we approve the minutes as written.
For the January 10th, 2022 meeting.
Yes, for the January 10th meeting.
Great. Can I get a second?
A second.
Thanks, Melanie. All right, at this point, if recording secretary, can you take a roll call vote?
Yes, Member Fuentes. Oh, you're on mute. No.
I will abstain since I was absent.
Oh, okay. All right.
That goes for me also. I have to abstain because I was not present at that meeting.
Because we need to have at least 4 yeses, we will need to vote on this particular item again, hopefully when the other members have joined. But we can move on to the next set of meeting minutes, as I believe everybody was present for those.
Great. Next up, we have the March 7th, 2022 meeting minutes. These were also distributed by email before our meeting today. Could I get a motion to, or sorry, let me first ask, were any modifications or clarifications needed for these meeting minutes? Seeing none, could I get a motion to approve the meeting minutes from March 7th?
So moved.
Okay. I would like to make a motion to approve March minutes as submitted, please.
Can I get a second?
Second. I beat you.
We'll give that one to Anne.
All right, at this time,
Yeah, get me on the,
Eileen, if you could take a roll call vote, that would be great.
Chair Kiefer,
I approve.
Vice Chair Jones Carter,
Approve.
Member Baumgartner,
approve,
Member Fuentes,
Approve.
Member Nathanson.
Approve.
Let the record show that the meeting minutes are approved as submitted.
Great, thank you, everyone. Next up, we have item 5, scheduled items. Item 5.1, we are going to hear a presentation this afternoon. Public Art and Highway 101 Bicycle and Pedestrian Overcrossing, Public Art Program and Transportation and Public Works. Staff will present the Highway 101 Bicycle and Pedestrian Overcrossing project background, visual context, and rendered designs. Today, our committee will discuss potential locations for the public art in the project and staff will receive committee input. Thank you. I will now pass this over to Tara.
Great, thank you, Kristen. And I'm happy to introduce Grant Bailey. He is an engineer with the Transportation and Public Works Department, and he's the project manager for the Highway 101 pedestrian and bicycle overcrossing. We will be presenting this item today, and we'll be happy to answer questions and provide and collect your input on the item. So we'll start off with Eileen, if you could open up our presentation and we'll get started. Great, thank you. So again, yeah, we'll skip right to our agenda. So today, the goal of this presentation and this discussion item is to go over the project background, the visual context and rendered designs, potential locations for public art, and committee input. Grant will be going over the first 3 items, and then I'll come back at the end and facilitate a conversation about your input on some specific points we'd like to hear from you about. And I think we can just go on to the next slide. Oh, first I'll go over a slight little bit of background. No, that's okay. You can keep that slide up. Sorry. I think this is, sorry, Grant, I'm totally blanking. I think this is when you take over here with the project background.
Yep. Thanks, Tara.
Go ahead.
Yeah, excited to be here today, Chair Kiefer and members of the committee. Thank you for having us and looking forward to giving you some background and setting the stage for this project. So this project is actually kind of came around in 2007, but for the sake of time and relevance, I think we'll try to keep the background a little bit shorter, and we'll start in March of 2021 when the project received environmental clearance for the CEQA and NEPA process. And we also got an approved project report through Caltrans, which allowed us to move forward with the next phase of the project, which is the detailed design phase, which we're currently in now. To kind of kick off the detailed design phase, we held a neighborhood meeting with the community members who would most likely be interfacing with this project on a regular basis. Those members of the community in and around the Cottingtown Mall complex and the JC, and that was held in July 2021. And during that meeting, we were able to seek some additional input about concerns the community may have, while also following up on some of the major concerns that were raised during the CEQA and NEPA environmental process. Following that meeting, we moved into finalizing the structure type for this, or the proposed structure type for this project. And in November 2021, we went to the city's design review board and proposed a cable stay design with single offset pylon. And you'll get a chance to see the rendered views of what that looks like and what that means here shortly. But kind of the result of that meeting was that the design review board unanimously approved that proposed design. And so that is the structure layout that we are currently working towards designing now. And then in December of 2021, we held an additional public meeting to report out on the design review board's recommendation or preference on the structure, as well as hold one last kind of forum before we really, started working on the design plans and the different design submittals for the community to raise concerns they may have, so we can catalog those and work towards addressing them. I'll mention that for all three of these public meetings that we had, there was a pretty big or quite a fair amount of input from the community voicing that they would like to see public art included as part of this project in some way, shape, or form. And that leads us to today, April of 2022, and the staff is presenting to the Art and Public Places Committee, giving a background and kind of setting the stage as mentioned. Next slide, please. So I'll just give you a quick overview of the project location. So the overcrossing project will connect East and West Santa Rosa at Elliott Avenue on the east and Edwards Avenue on the west. So Edwards Avenue is adjacent to Dick's Sporting Goods and the Cottingtown Mall complex on the west. And then on the east at Elliott Avenue, it connects to, well, most closely Santa Rosa Junior College, but a number of other residential and commercial complexes in the area. And not to mention, the JC is currently, or recently just broke ground on a new student housing complex that this project will also connect both sides of, connect students to both sides of the city. Next slide, please. So this is a similar view, but from an aerial image, and you can see this is looking north. In the background, you have the Shiloh Hills, and then on the left side of the screen or the slide, we have Dick's Sporting Goods and Cottingtown Mall, flanked by Edwards Avenue, and then on the right side of the screen, there's Elliott Avenue and the intersection of Armory Drive. Some of those buildings and landscaping you currently see there in the bottom right are actually not there anymore. The JC recently demolished all of that in preparation for their new student housing complex. Next slide, please. So now I kind of want to just take a moment to set the context of the existing conditions on the project before we go within the project area, before we go into some of the rendered designs for the overcrossing. So here on the right-hand side of the screen, we have northbound, we have a view from northbound 101. You can see on the right-hand side of that, excuse me, I think I said the right-hand side, but I meant the left-hand side of the slide, we have the northbound view from 101. And on the right-hand side of that photo, you can see there's actually a vacant lot there shown in the photo, and that is where construction is currently going on for the new JC housing complex. And on the right-hand side, you can kind of just see on the edge of the frame, I think I'm getting right and left mixed up, but sorry, on the left-hand side of the left photo, you can see just on the edge of the frame, you have Dick's Sporting Goods and the Patelco Bank there. On the right hand, in the right-hand photo, we have a view from 101 southbound, and again, views of Dick's and the commercial complex on the west side of the freeway, and then the JC on the east side of the freeway there. Next slide, please. This is an existing view, or these are existing views of Edwards Avenue. On the left hand, we have a photo of the intersection of Cleveland Avenue and Edwards Avenue looking west. You can see there's Patelco Bank and another commercial building at that intersection. And this gives a pretty good depiction of where the west touchdown area will ultimately be for the overcrossing. Then on the right-hand side of this slide is a photo of the neighborhood a little bit further west on Edwards Avenue. And it kind of gives an idea of what the current use of that area is. It's largely residential, fronting Edwards Avenue, and again with Cottingtown Mall and Dick's Sporting Goods in the area as well. Next slide, please. And then going to the other side of the freeway, this is Elliott Avenue, and the left-hand photo shows a picture of Elliott Avenue from Armory Drive looking east. You can see the lot in this photo on the right-hand side of the left photo is vacant, and it actually doesn't look like that right now. There are large mounds of dirt and I think ongoing construction currently. And then on the other side of the street, there's the JC Police Department. On the right side of the screen, we have a view of Elliott Avenue a little bit further east, just giving another view of the area. You can see there's a large oak tree, which this project, there's actually a series of oak trees along the south side of Elliott Avenue, which this project will be preserving to maintain the integrity of the existing integrity of the neighborhood. Next slide, please. So now we'll go into some rendered views of the overcrossing that were presented at the Design Review Board. So here is a view looking north from Highway 101 northbound. You can see there's the major support structure, the almost vertical pylon with the support, the cable stay supports extending down and supporting the deck structure of the overcrossing. And on the right-hand side, that's the JC, and on the left, that's the Patelco and Dick's parcel. Next slide, please. Here's a photo looking to the southeast from Highway 101 southbound. It gives a really good idea of what that support pylon looks like if you're looking at towards the JC. This photo would be, well, is I guess framed during the early morning. I kind of just have the sun rising there in the east. And another interesting thing I like about this rendering too is it gives a view of the overcrossing, but it also gives a view of what the proposed or what the JC housing complex will look like there in the background. And so, kind of gives an idea of how the two structures will kind of commingle. Next slide, please. And so moving on to views from the bridge deck itself. So here is a view looking west. You can see Dick's Sporting Goods in the background, kind of on the right there. And this is a rendering that's probably, about lunchtime or, early afternoon. And I'll note that there are two types of uses or facilities for this overcrossing, bike and pedestrian overcrossing. So if you're looking at the bridge deck from this view, on the right-hand side, we have a pedestrian walkway. I think it's about 5 feet wide. And then on the left-hand side, we have a bidirectional bicycle pathway. And between the pedestrian and bicycle pathway, there's a mountable angled curb. Next slide, please. Here's a similar view, but looking east from the bridge deck. You're kind of a little bit further to the west of the pylon, so you get the effect of what the cables that support the bridge deck will look like from the deck itself. And then on the right-hand side of the screen, you can see a portion of the new JC housing complex that is currently being built. Next slide, please. Here's another view looking to the southwest, and we're on Elliott Avenue in this location. You can see the pylon extending up from the ground. It's anchored by a series of cables as well, and supporting the deck through another series of cables. And this view is also approximately noon or early afternoon. Next slide, please. Another view of the cable stay pylon, probably about 1 o'clock in the afternoon view, and just to give an idea of what this view would look like, looking up pretty much from the base of the pylon on the foundation. Next slide, please. Here's a view looking west, probably from somewhere within the JC housing complex. This would be probably later afternoon, and just to give an idea of the what that pylon structure will look like with the cables, cable stay design, with different lighting and viewpoints. Next slide, please. And then here's a view of the overcrossing looking east, but in the late evening going on night, twilight, and gives an idea of what that structure will look like with being lit up. We're using under railing lights to light the structure in a way that maintains a safe environment and safe use during the dark hours, but also isn't overbearing and overlit, so it maintains the aesthetics of the structure. Next slide, please. So now I'm going to go through a few areas that the design team, I've worked with the design team to identify for potential art installations at the, I guess, within the project limits. So there's kind of a lot going on in this slide. So on the top of the slide, we have an elevation view, and this would be looking north. So kind of behind that would be Dick's Sporting Goods. And then on the lower portion of the slide, we have a plan view. And so you can see, we've called out where Dick's parking lot is, and then Patelco Bank kind of on the right-hand side of the screen. The areas we've shaded in blue are currently proposed to be landscaped areas, but they could be a pretty suitable area for some type of art installation. And I have a few rendered views here as well that I'll show in the next couple slides, but just to give, I guess, a little bit more, or let you get your bearings, Edwards Avenue is at the bottom of the page, and then on the far right-hand side, we have Cleveland Avenue, at the intersection with Cleveland Avenue as well. So I think here we've identified about 2,500 to 3,000 square feet of potential areas where art could be installed, or art, some type of art installation. Next slide, please. So this is a rendered view of that same area. We didn't have a rendered view that actually showed all of the overcrossing or the landing area under the overcrossing. So I'll just note that a little bit off screen to the right, there is more area for potential use, but this kind of gives a good idea of what this side of what this landing area looks like. And so you can see the kind of oval, the yellow oval shapes kind of identify areas where we're proposing an area that would be well suited for an art installation. In this rendering, we've shown it to be landscaped, and we worked with. We heard a lot from the community that there were concerns about loitering and possible unsheltered encampments. And so the way that we have designed the landscaping so far is to be visually appealing, drought tolerant, but not very nice, not to touch. So it kind of discourages spending time outside of the sidewalk area. and pass-through areas. I'll also mention here that some of the input we received from the community was a preference for a meandering sidewalk. And so you'll see kind of the sidewalk isn't necessarily a traditional sidewalk that just kind of runs straight through near the edge of the roadway, but it actually kind of meanders through and under the overcrossing, West Landing here. Next slide, please. Here's a view from ground level. Again, the rendering shows landscaping, but this would effectively be, if the committee felt this was an appropriate location, could effectively be right in the middle of an art installation. Next slide, please. And then this is the same view, just different time of day. We're working to design a well-lit structure, both on the structure itself and under the structure, to maintain security and encourage use at all times of the day. The lighting plan is to have a softened light. You can kind of see them built in to the underside of the structure. And I'll also note that I think that there's a fair amount of room for, I guess we've proposed these locations as, shown in the landscaped area, but I think that there's a good opportunity to also utilize the columns, or possibly even hang some type of installation from the underside of the structure, or utilize the surfaces on the underside of the structure for some type of art installation. Next slide, please. And then, so moving now to the east side of the freeway, adjacent to the junior college. This is another elevation and plan view. So on the top, you'll see the top portion of this slide, you'll see the overcrossing sloping down to the landing area. There's some parking identified right up to the edge of the roadway. And underneath the overcrossing that is associated with the JC. And so in this area, we've identified 2 areas shaded in blue that is about 2,700 square feet of area that could potentially be used right adjacent to Elliott Avenue for some type of art installation. Next slide, please. So there's kind of a lot going on in this slide, but I'll try to work my way through it. So kind of in the background, that is where the JC's housing complex would be. And then if you look here, kind of in the center of the screen, we have some bollards barring vehicle entry, but this is effectively where bicycles and pedestrians would gain access to the walking paths on the edge of, or the sidewalks on the edge of Elliott Avenue. And then if you kind of look to the right of the screen, you'll see the overcrossing east leg kind of gently sloping up there. So right in front of that area is where the yellow oval is shown, is another area, or the area on the east side of the project, where we've identified a potentially suitable location for an art installation. There's a lot of landscaping going on there. I'll say most of those trees, the smaller ones, are not set in stone by any means, but those 2 larger trees kind of, well, in the circle, those I believe are heritage oak trees, which will remain on the project. There's also a small retaining wall there that I believe was just built into the rendering for aesthetic purposes, and I don't think that there's any structural need to maintain that at this point. Next slide, please. And then here's another view kind of looking down on that area from probably the JC housing complex. You can see this is kind of where the major interaction between the different modes of transportation will occur. You'll have students coming from, or students, faculty, and members of the public coming from the JC, or going to using the overcrossing either coming from the west or heading west, and to get to Elliott Avenue and other parts of the east side of Santa Rosa. And then you'll see again that yellow oval shape identifying the area we've kind of pointed out for a potential art area. And next slide, please. And so with that, I want to thank you for your time this afternoon. I'm going to hand it back over to Tara.
Thank you, Grant. You can keep that slide up, please. Thank you. So yeah, the point of our discussion today is really to first introduce you to this project, show you what stage it's in currently, talk a little bit about the design locations that have been identified for public art, and get your input on that. So 3 main points that we're looking for input on today are: 1, should public art be included in this project and supported by the public art program? 2, your input on the locations identified for public art within the project area. And 3, your input on appropriate budget for the public art component for this project. So before we open it up to conversation, there's just one more slide which has our timeline on it. So next slide, our next steps are anticipated here. Should we move forward with having the public art program essentially manage a public art component in this project, we would be looking at this overall timeline. So this summer, we would be finalizing the public art funding and budget. And then summer, fall, we will be developing the public art project plan and the RFQ, request for qualifications. This fall, we would be bringing back the project plan and the RFQ to the APPC for approval, and then publishing the RFQ. Then looking ahead to the winter and spring of 2023, we would be going through our selection process for the public art. In summer of 2023, we would have a selected artist and design be approved by Art in Public Places. And then from the fall of 2023 through 2025, we would be coordinating the installation of the public art with the overall construction timeline, that's construction of the overcrossing. So next slide, please. So right now, both Grant and I are available to answer your questions. And I want to thank Grant for being available to present with me today on this project, as he is the manager for the overall project and knows all the ins and outs of it. And he's available, of course, to answer questions. And the next slide, we'll just keep this slide up. If needed, we can refer back to it. Eileen, if you could go one more slide. It just has a reminder of what we're seeking input on for today, and then shows the 2 locations, one on the west side, one on the east side of the possible locations for public art. So first, I guess, open it up to questions, and I guess we'll take this off so we can see each other's faces, but Eileen, I might have you put that slide back up later.
Thanks, Tara. I just had a little bit of housekeeping. I would like to do questions first, and then take our public comment, and then come back for discussion within our committee. So just a little heads up, but please, yes, if you have a question, please raise your hand. Hi, Lisa. Yes, please go ahead.
My question is, doesn't this fall under the 1% for art in the city? And if so, how much is that? How much is that 1%? Or how much is the project?
Yeah, great question, Lisa. So no, the short answer is no, this is not applicable because there are no general fund funds in this project budget. It's all from grants, as far as I understand. And so it is not by fact of our ordinance required to pay in the 1% for public art, which we could then turn around and put on site, right? Like what we did with Courthouse Square.
Yes.
So the 1% of the construction budget, though, would be a good number to aim for this project if we were to put public art on site. And I believe that would be about $210,000 would be the 1%. Is that right, Grant?
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah. Okay.
In that 200, oh,
Sorry, Melanie, please go ahead.
and that $210,000 would come from Art in Public Places, or is the project have money to contribute to the art as well?
Yeah, that is still to be determined. There are no funds currently identified for public art in this project. However, I think that there's an opportunity here to look at public art funds and what would be an appropriate amount given our other priorities and already committed to projects. But I believe that there's also an opportunity to seek funding directly from council for additional funding for the project, specifically for public art. So that's something that Grant might be able to speak to, but that is something that we have considered.
I can add just a little bit to that. I'll say that traditionally, the grant funding sources that we have identified for this project have not funded public art. It's more strictly for the construction and management of the public infrastructure.
Well, you all need to put some art in there, money for art in there. And you're building a project, you need some art. That wasn't really a question. So I saw that oh, sorry, I'm just talking away. Go ahead, Ann, sorry.
You're on mute, Anne.
Melanie, if you weren't done, I thought you were done, so I'd raise. You want to say more? Do you want to finish your thought? Because
Okay, so the items, you did indicate that there's a possibility to do something like on the underside of the bridge. But what about going across the span of the freeway as well? Is that open as well?
So there will probably be some restrictions around that as far as, well, there are a few complications going on. I guess the first I'll say is, I don't know about a majority, but a significant portion of the bridge crosses over Caltrans right of way.
Mhm.
And I'm not sure if the committee is familiar with the process to have public art installed within Caltrans right of way, but it's relatively laborious and time consuming. And that's not to say that it's impossible. And certainly within the city's right of way is probably a more attractive location on the structure itself, just because of how the challenges presented with getting Caltrans approval. The other challenge I will note is this structure being what it is, the cable stay design is fairly complex, and the loading that the members are experiencing it can pose challenges when adding new loads, so that it's not to say that it's impossible, but I guess the preferred type of installations on the structure themselves would probably be painting or very low load type structures that wouldn't necessarily have interactions with the wind or additional weight on the structure itself.
Okay. I'm done.
okay.
Go ahead, Ann.
I live in this neighborhood, so I've been watching this project and I'm really excited about it because it's such a huge barrier, that 101 to getting across. And I'm really involved with the junior college too in that space. So I'm wondering, is there ever going to be any security about this kind of, and which does kind of play out into art and things installed, just in that it's a good long span. And is the JC going to partner with whoever would be having jurisdiction over the span across this, is that Caltrans? Is there any kind of, does that ever come into the play, or is it sort of a free-for-all?
And this is relative to security of the structure and components within the project area.
And people on it.
And the people on it.
Oh,
Yeah.
definitely. I'm definitely going from a pedestrian person view. Yeah.
Of course. And so we've been working with Santa Rosa PD, and they've offered commitments to up patrols in the area, to increase security. Additionally, and we don't have any formal agreement in place, but the current JC police office is directly across the street from where the East Landing will be.
Right.
We're working to find ways to light it in an aesthetically pleasing way that also offers, a secure feeling for, users at all times. That being said, we have been working with all of the community members and neighbors in the area since the beginning of the project. Again, I don't think there's any formal partnership that's been initiated, but there's definitely commitment from many parties to make this project a success.
Jeff, go ahead.
Thank you. Grant, thank you very much for that presentation and responding to the questions. It looks like a really great project. A couple of questions I have. One is, what is the clearance from the ground to the underside of the structure? I didn't see any indication of that. Like if we wanted to do any kind of suspended works or anything of that nature.
Yeah, I don't have the numbers immediately available. It's certainly something I could look up. But if you wanted to go back to one of the slides, I do know one of the clearances on the west side, and I can probably give you a general idea of what that is. I think we're probably looking at slide that one there. We're one forward, and then we'll go a couple more back in a moment. So I believe at the interface of the where the overcrossing touches down, so kind of where there's all the vertical lines and then the cars on the top, kind of closer to the right side. I believe that clearance is about 9 feet, and then it gently slopes up as it heads west. Although, sorry, that's less relevant because that wasn't within the proposed area, I think, for the overcrossing, except for a small portion. You have that shaded blue area. So yeah, if we could go, I think 4 slides back. Right. Okay. So actually, if you look on the top of this slide, yes, we do have those vertical clearances listed.
Great.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, that's helpful. Thank you. And then mention of lighting, attractive, aesthetically pleasing lighting. I have seen some really great public art projects that are actually done with lighting. And so would there be an openness to perhaps having an artist work with a lighting designer to do something with the lighting that would be maybe a bit more creative than your run-of-the-mill lighting?
Absolutely. I don't think that there's any opposition to that. I would have to check in with my design team on that as well. But I think this actually it's a good time to also mention that the plan is to run the 2 projects separately but concurrently. So the art, I guess the process to bring on an artist would be independent of the actual overcrossing project. However, we do have, or I've worked with our design team to, ensure that they're committed to working with an artist once they're brought on and doing what we can to accommodate them and their vision.
Great, thank you.
Great. I have a couple of questions now. Thanks, Jeff, for mentioning the lighting. I first off wanted to ask if that was set in stone since this project has been approved by the design review board. I wanted to understand what the scope of their approval meant. And so I'll start with that question.
So that's a good question. The scope of the approval was, we went to the design review board to get input and ultimately approval on the structure type itself. And so there were a number of different structure types that had been considered during the environmental process. And it was actually the second meeting we had with the design review board in November. And in the first one, they had indicated a preference toward this structure type, which we showed them. And then they confirmed that was their selection, the cable stay design. I'll also note, now that kind of I've made reference to the environmental process, we did evaluate lighting impacts to the community as well. And so those types, I think that there's certainly some type, some flexibility there, but the impacts and how we were going to mitigate the impacts of the project to the community were identified in the environmental document. So there are some, I guess, guidelines or bumpers as far as, the capacity of changing the lighting, although I do think that it is possible.
Great, thank you for that information. In terms of Caltrans right-of-way, the scope of that, were the areas identified as potential opportunities, were those specifically chosen because they were not areas that was in Caltrans right-of-way?
Yes, that played a large role in the consideration and selection of the potential areas.
Okay. And for my information, or for our group's information, who identified those potential areas as opportunity sites?
So that was our project architect, Stephen Grover and Associates, who's a sub-consultant to the design engineer, BKF Engineers.
Great. Oh,
it was ultimately in my direction, requesting that they look at that. But that was, they took into consideration, a number of different factors, including constructability, easements within the area, because there are foundation easements, and I guess I'll call it a maintenance easement, although that's not what it's called. But we still need to provide access to the underside of the structure for maintenance purposes and inspection, et cetera. And so a number of considerations were taken into account, and Caltrans right-of-way was certainly among the top considerations.
okay. My next question, sorry, I have a couple more briefly. Tara might be able to answer this. Do you know if the Santa Rosa Junior College housing complex project, will that incorporate any public artworks?
No, they are exempt from our ordinance, I believe.
Okay. And that's good information. Okay. And
I also, and just to clarify, I believe because it's considered residential, it's not, that's the distinguishing factor that exempts it. We also exempt non-city municipal projects, which I'm not sure that applies in this case, but I believe it's because it's residential.
that makes sense. Do you know if there's any design guidelines for this area, or any kind of consistency that would need to be adhered to for any projects in this area?
I'm not aware of any, but that's not necessarily, that doesn't usually come into play for public art.
And my last question was looking at the landing areas on the east and west sides. We got to see a little bit of, the rendering gave a good idea of how this would work. In terms of a plaza area, is that kind of the width of the sidewalk in that area, the approach to getting on to the pedestrian bridge? Or is there a larger concrete area outside of the approach to the bridge?
Yeah, that's a good question. So it's actually one of each, I think, of the scenarios you described. So on the west side, there is it's a small mixing area, I suppose, but it connects immediately to the sidewalk. So I think it's around 10 by 10, or, well, no, it's probably more like 15 by 15, if not a little bit larger. I don't think there's a very good depiction of it in the slides that we presented today, but the environmental document for the project does do a pretty good job of detailing that, because that was among the concerns of how the community would mix with traffic in the area as well. On the JC side, that there's more like a semblance of a plaza area, because of the you have the JC itself, the housing complex, and then the overcrossing all kind of converging on one area. And so it is, well, in fact, we haven't even finalized what that interface will look like, but it is something we're working towards to get a kind of congruent mixing area there. And it will be probably not like a proper plaza, but it will be fairly open and allow for movements from both types of bike and pedestrian users.
Great, thank you. I'll send it over to Lisa for questions now.
My question was answered, so I just have comments, so I'll wait.
Melanie, did you have another question? You're on mute, Melanie.
If we decide to participate in this project and we have alternative sites for where the committee thinks art should go, how does that work?
So, these are only proposed locations that we've presented today. If the committee has alternative locations, the staff and the design team are more than happy to entertain them and look into them. These were, as I mentioned, there were a number of considerations taken into account, but it doesn't rule out other areas. And if the committee has other alternative direction, we can certainly look into it.
Okay. And one of the other things I was looking at was those open space, like leading up to, we have this similar bridge in Palo Alto where I came from, a bike and pedestrian crossway, which I used all the time. And they did art going across the bridge itself, which was actually kind of nice. On the span, on the ground, but the space, the landing space right as you're going on looks like a good opportunity for something as well.
I believe that was input we received from the community at, I think, the December meeting. That was the bridge deck could be a really good opportunity for public art. Again, without going through the process of engaging Caltrans, it would probably have to be limited to within the city right of way, but there's still a substantial length of the landing areas that could potentially be utilized for on the bridge deck.
Lisa, you had another question?
Yeah, yes, I do. It's not what Melanie was saying about the Palo Alto. The one I always think of too when we talk about overpass is the one on I-80 west in West Berkeley. And that has a large art piece, which I think was around 200,000 in probably about 12, 13 years ago they did that. And that's how much that piece was. And it was, and I'm assuming that since that's on the structure or the beginning of the structure, that would be Caltrans. And I do really appreciate how the commute traffic can see it and everybody else can see that, whether it be bicycles and pedestrians and everything else. But to have something on that, you know what I'm talking about, Grant?
I believe so, yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
actually, Lisa, those are removed now. They were taken down a couple years ago.
Okay, it was. Okay. So well, then never mind.
But
That's probably not a
your
good
point-
example.
Your point is still well taken. They were visible from the freeway.
Yes.
I think your point. Yeah.
And it is. And what they were doing was inviting people to come over that bridge to the other side to do, be active and, with others and out there. So, which was nice. And I know a lot of people have seen that because it's very visible. But what I'm getting here, and I just want to I'm just trying to get a better idea, is since we have these places that are on the ground rather than on the structure, it's just going to be visible for the traffic, people in the cars and on foot and on bike in that area, not necessarily 101, because it would have to be pretty large to be visible from 101, correct?
Yeah, based on the proposed locations, it's pretty unlikely that the installations wouldn't be visible from 101.
Okay, that's good to know. And then I also like how there's multiple opportunities to place art, just because if we do and have an artist that looks at these places, it gives them more opportunity to be creative, whether they want to have a tall, long, skinny, some kind of structure, or some kind of structure that is just more or less, can continue to, take a few of these different places and stuff. So I definitely want to go on ground and look at all these different places that you do have circle and physically be there to go check them out. But I do appreciate the more, to have a few, alternatives and for other people to be able to be creative with those options that you have presented.
Go ahead, Melanie.
Okay, because I have to leave. I'm thinking this would be, if we decide to do this project, it's a good opportunity to bring in multiple artists to do some things instead of maybe just one person who's doing the whole thing, because it could be kind of fun for Tara. All right, I have to go.
Thank you, Melanie.
All right, take
Hey,
care.
Melanie.
Jeff, did you have another question?
Well, actually, Melanie just made a comment, and I was going to make a comment.
I think we're going to
in
take
agreement,
comments
but-
after we do public comment,
Right,
if that's
but
okay
it's a
with you.
comment, it's not a question. So yes, I will be patient.
I'll come back to comments in just a minute. I do have one more question for Grant. In terms of kind of the line of questioning that Jeff brought up before, if an artist were to propose something suspended from the bridge or attached to the bridge, would that fit with the timeline that was proposed in terms of our selection process? I want to make sure that we have an understanding of when the engineering team needs to have any proposals for artwork that would be attached to the bridge.
That's a good question that I'm probably gonna have to go back to our design team with. I think they could probably give us a upper bound of what's possible as far as, yes, we could hang 1,000-pound structure if it were located over so many, such and such a length. But I don't have a very good answer for you at this point. But that's something I can definitely follow up with the committee on.
I can add that one way to address that, to not impact the construction timeline itself, would be for the design team to give us, like Grant said, like the maximum weight or parameters that the art would have to fit within in order for that to be considered. So for instance, the RFQ could state seeking artists or one artist or artists for public art within this project. Here are all of the available canvases, so to speak, and we could list all of the available areas that we're considering, leave it up to an artist to propose. But if they're interested in anything on the structure itself, we would set those parameters that they would have to fall under. so that we wouldn't be getting a proposal for something that was too heavy or would require additional engineering that would be too late to do at that point. So I think there is a way to address that as long as we get what we need from the design team early enough.
And I think we are at a stage now where we could still, get that information and have a successful RFP.
Great, thank you. Does any committee member have any other questions for Grant or Tara at this time? All right, I would like to now ask Eileen if we have any public comments on the docket for this item.
We do not have any voicemails or emails for this. We do have an individual with their hand raised. That is David Harris. Mr. Harris, if you would, you should have the ability to speak at this point.
Yes, I've hit the unmute.
Great. And if you could just confirm your ability to see the timer?
I can see the timer.
Wonderful. Please go ahead.
Okay, my name is David Harris, and I have lived in Santa Rosa for 35 years. And as has been mentioned, 101 is certainly a barrier to east-west movement in the city. I've called it the Berlin Wall of Santa Rosa. And I have been an advocate for this overcrossing since 2005, which happens to be the year that we adopted a daughter from China. And now she is a senior in high school. And we are finally getting to this overcrossing. And certainly we've been aware of climate crisis, but I think, well, it is crisis level, and we need to be acting in accordance with our understanding as a crisis. I mean, Grant Bailey has heard me talk on this project many times, and but I really think we need to readjust our perspectives on what we can accomplish and what we need to be doing to really have an impact on climate change. We have not changed our dependence on fossil fuel transportation and heating in this area, and we are one of the most conscious localities in the country. It is really quite appalling that we continue. The AIA, the American Institute of Architects, has been aware, say the last 5 years, they've been working on the issue of embodied carbon in structures. And I want to make an appeal to you as art people to begin to look at art as what can art communicate to help the public adopt more appropriate approaches in their lives to not continue to make such negative impacts on climate change. And that is, we need more public transit, and we need more alternative infrastructure like this. And the key thing didn't get mentioned, but this, one of the things that this will provide is an access to the SMART train, public transit. That public transit is essentially invisible to most of the public. They're not aware that they have that alternative when they're driving up and down 101. And I have said for years that this overcrossing could be a communicator to the kids in the car seats in the back seat, as well as the drivers and the other passengers, that it is time to make changes in the way we transport ourselves. And I would like to see this structure communicate as much as possible, as catchily as possible, that we have alternatives to those fossil fuel driven cars, the hundreds of thousands that go up and down 101 every day. And that, you know, that isn't what art people normally think about, but I think it is time, considering the urgency, to think about a new perspective on the goal of art. And I see the timer's run out.
Thank you, Mr. Harris. We have no additional hands raised at this time.
Great, thank you for relaying the public comment. I'll now kick it back over to our committee for any discussion items. Would anyone like to go first? Lisa, please.
Okay, and I would just want to thank Mr. Harris too for everything he said. There's a lot of points that actually I want to relay to, and I did want to talk about SMART and how this bridge that's what it is. It's going to put the people at the Santa Rosa JC and SMART and it's going to be play as something to put them together, which is definitely something that is needed. Also too, I am 100% for art being actually on both sides of this overcrossing. And I'll tell you why. And that is because of, like everyone has said, 101 is a barrier. And what it did for everybody is it purposely sectioned off and broke up communities. This overpass, it's a connection and it made two sides of the city. We need to get that connected back together. And to do so, it would be important to have pieces of, to have art on each side and welcoming people and to have some relationship with each other and some relevance with each other and connect. And so each side can have some kind of, harmonious relationship with each other. Whatever this piece may be, I honestly think it needs to be something that's dynamic because we want movement and we want this bridge to have continuous movement, whether it be bicycles, whether it be pedestrians. And we want to make sure that people who are shopping, who are commuting, have this alternative and want to use it and want something that's inviting. And so I think a lot of this is, it absolutely, I think it's crucial for this design and for it to take place and for it to be used. Art is definitely something that will welcome, it can give and can welcome these people, welcome the community with open arms to say, hey, come use this. This is yours. This is part of you. This is what we're here for. And I do remember there was an overpass many years ago, but I think it was more towards downtown Santa Rosa than that's what they tore down. And that structure was ugly and it was hideous. But it was sad when they did tear it down because there was no other way of getting over there, on that side at that time. And I also want to thank Mr. Harris too, for all his commitment to get this, to be a part of this and voice yourself on, having this done. And I definitely appreciate that. And I appreciate people like you who, stand behind this to keep going, even though it's been, your daughter being in high school now, and graduating. And I think that was my comments that I had. So anyone else?
Thanks, Lisa. Jeff, please go ahead.
Thank you. I also want to thank Mr. Harris for his comments and his perseverance. Art definitely has the ability and the power to communicate, whether it's about environmental issues, socio-political issues, or just to connect community, as Lisa was just talking about. One of the things that strikes me is that there were some questions or earlier comments about whether the art is viewable from the freeway, from cars. And I'd like to suggest the design of this is more suited to pedestrian and bicycle use. And if we're really going to be talking about shifting our dependence away from cars, we can even debate electric vehicles, and there's issues with them and the construction of batteries and how we're going to get rid of those batteries once they're no longer usable. But I like the idea that we really look at the overcrossing itself and the paths on either side leading to it and under it as being inviting for use. And so it occurs to me that it may take multiple artists. This goes to a comment that Melanie said she made right before she left the meeting. But I look at the path as it's designed going under the overcrossing with its landscaping and its sort of meandering path design as being somewhat similar to what New York did with the High Line, or what LBC has in their sculpture garden. And I think a really wonderfully attractive approach could be multiple sculptures or other artworks. On the other hand, we could also put our attention towards doing something that is suspended or on the span of the bridge or something like that, that would be visible to cars. And I think that'd be more difficult. And frankly, I think I'd be more in favor of doing something that invites people to walk or ride their bikes in and around and over the overcrossing. One way we might approach multiple artists is to have maybe an ongoing program of revolving sculpture or something like that. It would be perhaps a different kind of budget. It would have to exist over a number of years rather than just installation of something one time and then the maintenance on it. But however we approach this, I would be in favor of a public art project for this overcrossing.
Thanks, Jeff, for your comments. Anne, did you have anything to add? You're on mute, Anne.
Sorry. I just want to jump on the end of Jeff's because I totally was thinking that way too, Jeff. What you were talking about at the end is, I love the idea of both sides. I feel like the entrance is got to be dynamic in terms of activating the interest of coming and going. The crossing is just so important. I also think it would be really intriguing to think about a way to design some spaces that would hold some different kinds of art installations. And I mean, this is just off the top of my head, but I'm just saying, I don't think it necessarily has to be a static thing that's is placed and never leaves again. Or, but I don't know all the details of how that would work. But I like the idea of it not only having some wayfinding and interesting kind of design sense that you recognize it, you know you're there, or you know on either side, and you know you're coming close, but also that has some sort of intrigue that you want to go back again just for the sake of the experience, let alone its function. So very interested in this. I do think, I want to also say, I totally think we should do stuff, do lots of art here.
Thanks, Anne. I'll add my comments in at this point. I also did want to voice support for an opportunity for Art in Public Places to sponsor artwork at this location. And I do want to encourage opportunity for multiple opportunities for artwork here, not just one. And with that, potentially maybe the opportunity for something that is temporary, you know, a painting of, you know, a mandala of sorts or something at either approach to encourage, if that's not an opportunity, to paint on the bike path itself or something in it, like how we painted crosswalks or triangle intersections to get people to slow down and look around. I think that's also a great opportunity for creating some temporary artwork in this space as well. I would also encourage the thought for lighting design to address some of the concerns for either loitering or unsafe encampments in the area. A lot can be done with lighting to create an artistic space that would be used rather than left vacant. So I think there are a lot of opportunities for including artwork here, and I am looking forward to working with city staff to help define and move forward with the RFQ process. So those are my comments for today.
Great, thank you, everyone. I feel like there was some great input on both questions 1 and 2. I'm wondering if there's any feedback on the appropriate budget that I can collect from you. Any thoughts on that? And just to remind you that 1% of the total construction budget would be about $210,000.
Jeff, did you have a comment on this?
Yeah, a question and a comment. So knowing that it's not actually funded out of the project budget as other public projects might be, Tara, do you have a sense of where $210,000 or any sum of money might come from, how that might be raised?
The Public Art Fund has a current reserve balance that I can provide to you at our next meeting when we talk about our annual plan. And I think that will be a better opportunity to see the full picture of the available funds in reserves and all of the other projects we've already committed our funds to. So I don't want to speak to a certain dollar amount right now, but I can definitely bring more forward on that at our next meeting. I do believe that there's room, regardless though, of some amount coming from the Public Art Fund. I think it's just a matter of what exact amount, and then how do we leverage that with other asks we may need to make to flesh out the full budget.
Okay, great. And then I guess a question to look at the time we're reviewing the budget and what might be available now is what a budget for a permanent installation by one or multiple artists might look like relative to, let's say, a public art sculpture program that would have changing sculpture maybe once a year or something like that. Thinking about the way LBC or other sculpture programs will have temporary or semi-permanent works on view and then change them out. So then the commissioning or actual purchase of works is not really what is going to be the expense, but it would be rental, insurance, installation, rental. What I mean by that is a fee paid to the artist for use of their work during a period of time. So I'd be really interested to look at what those options might be from a financial perspective relative to what our conceptual approach is.
Yeah, I think another consideration there is not just financial, but it's staffing resources. I don't think currently the public art program has the staffing resources to have a rotating program that takes regular kind of management. So I would be interested in looking at a partnership with the museum or some other entity that we could partner on to be the manager of a rotating program. I think that's the only way that I can see us taking on something like that in the our current status. So I think so. Comparing financial staffing resources and project goals, I think are all important for what is determined to be the best fit for this. And maybe it's a variety of things put together.
Great, thank you.
Lisa?
Yeah, because I'm thinking we need a piece that's large enough to define the space that it's going to occupy and encourage, interactivities, which, for the bike riders, the pedestrians, and even, as Mr. Harris said, recognizing Bart be over there.
Smart, not smart.
Or Bart, not smart. Thank you. That it would be appropriate for at least a 1%, and what we were talking about, to look at that, and especially since we're looking at art even on both sides. And then I'm just I'm thinking about that because I'm thinking about a lot of other transit areas and the pieces that they have that attract people and welcome people there and how much they spend, which is a lot more than that. And then I'm thinking about all of the different art installations when we were doing the downtown, looking for something for downtown sculptures, how many people applied for that, and which was that somewhat in that range, and looking at over 100, it's not as much. You really don't, people think it's a lot more than what it really is. And just to see something that was significant, that would make a difference, I really think that 1% would be appropriate. At least 1%.
Great. Thank you, everybody. I really appreciate all your input. And I've got notes here and we'll bring back. It sounds like there's, with the folks here, unanimous support in making this a project that the public art program will be involved in. And I've got lots of notes on locations, goals for the project. I feel like we can easily move forward with investigating additional sources of funding, plus what would be available from Public Art Fund. And so, yeah, we'll bring back, when we get to the next step here, we'll bring back more information to the committee on the budget component of it, and then the project plan and RFQ. So thank you.
Thank you, Tara and Grant. I look forward to hearing more about this and our opportunities that we discussed today.
Great. And thank you so much, Grant, for being a part of our presentation.
Yep. Thank you guys for giving me the opportunity to present to you.
Yeah,
Thank
appreciate
you,
it.
Grant.
Bye.
Mhm.
All right, next I would like us to move to item 6.1. We've got committee,
Oh,
sorry,
sorry.
5.2
Yeah, 5.2.
first, sorry. Project update, so I'll turn it back over to Tara. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. I don't have very many today, just a few. For Unum, our Courthouse Square project. Unfortunately, during the last 2 months, the artist has come up with some shipping delays and material delays due to everything that's happening in the world currently. So the installation date has now been pushed to August, this August. So we're looking at about a month behind schedule due to those shipping and material delays. I'll keep you updated if she has any further updates, but that's the latest on that one. For the 5th Street parking garage project, the Help Each Other Grow mural, MJ, Lindo Lawyer, and Joshua Lawyer have proposed a tentative installation start date of May 2nd. So we're coming up on that. I will let you know when that, when we get closer. I think our May meeting will be March 2nd. So hopefully I'll have an update for you at that time. And if there's an opportunity for you to come out, check out the installation. We definitely want to plan a dedication celebration of some kind. So stay tuned for details about that. I don't think there's any other updates on some of, let's see, I'm looking at my list on those projects. So I guess the only other one I have is the Art Surround project, which is our partnership with Creative Sonoma. The application for artists opens tomorrow. So you can find more information on Creative Sonoma's website at creativesonoma.org/artsurround. And those are all the project updates I have for you today. Happy to answer any questions though.
I don't have any questions at this time. Thanks for the updates. Does anyone else have any questions?
No.
Okay, thanks, Tara. Now we'll move on to committee reports, and looking at 6.1, we've got our ad hoc task force reports and discussion. First off, we have the Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Access Task Force. Do we have any updates for today? Go ahead, Lisa.
Yes. So yes, Anne,
Hello.
you, Kristen, and Melanie and I have been collaborating on participating with the Santa Rosa Junior College street mural. Melanie submitted the application. Kristen, Ann, and I are working on the concept. We've met a few times and are getting this together. There will be 30 groups participating with this project, including numerous Santa Rosa JC clubs and many local nonprofit art organizations. And we'll be working on this for the next month.
Yeah.
Next few weeks and stuff. So we're pretty excited to be a part of this.
Yeah, and everyone can be a part. So
Yes.
with
absolutely.
a paintbrush.
Yay.
And a reminder, this is a social activity for our committee.
Right.
So
Right.
It is.
So that,
It
that's
is.
I mean, what I mean is that they even stated that others could help on ours. It's an interactive. It's not like it's just us doing it. You know, it'll be
Yes.
a wider variety of people. So it should be a great way to.
And it will be by the Art in Public Places doing
Yeah,
this.
brand
But
it.
yes.
Yeah.
So
But it's not official.
I look forward to painting for Earth Day.
Yes, exactly.
All right, next we have the Community Engagement Task Force.
Yes, thank you. Melanie and I met about community engagement, and we had a fairly in-depth discussion about the community engagement aspect of the Unum project, and just thinking about what could have been done better, and what our evaluation and assessment of that process looked like. Without going over the timeline of the whole project or anything like that, and I think we really have to have maybe a more official evaluation and assessment done. But a couple of our recommendations are that we really give the APBC and the community engagement team the ability to participate in the development of criteria before we go out to the community. So we really know what we're trying to look to get from the community, and that the process include representatives from APPC going out to community organizations so that we can really have a more participatory process. We acknowledge that we tried to do everything during COVID, so we should give ourselves a break. But the reality is, I think we really have to identify, and well, we already have a list. We have a really good long list of community organizations with whom we can interact. So with that in mind, we'd like to recommend that we partner with the Office of Community Engagement and schedule a town hall meeting or community forum or some such event that we can invite members of the community to meet with us and to actually have a conversation about what the community would like public art to look like in Santa Rosa, and to really make this a proactive participatory kind of process, so that we're engaging people really more at a strategic level. And so we can use that to also try to cultivate relationships, so that when we have a project in which we want community input, we have relationships that already kind of set the stage. I think we've done a pretty good job, all things considered, especially with COVID. But at this point, we think that we could actually take some steps to do better. And we talked about who some of our key partners could be in reaching out. Rotary, the Sonoma County Black Forum, the Hispanic Chamber, LOCN, Japanese American Citizens League, some of those kinds of organizations might be really good to connect with. And then we also talked about where we're identifying some missed opportunities. For example, I went last week, a week ago Saturday, to the unveiling of the Mary Lou Lowrider. And the event was organized by the Office of Community Engagement and the police department. But I found myself thinking a lot about how lowride customized cars are really works of art, rolling works of art. And the Mary Lou Lowrider is, in a sense, a work of public art. And lowriders in general are. So I wondered if maybe APPC might have had a role in that kind of an event. And so maybe a closer relationship with the Office of Community Engagement might help with that. And then we also looked at what our strategic and conceptual attitude might be regarding community-based art making, collective art making, so artists who work in social practice. And so knowing that there are artists in our community and in surrounding communities who make their art collectively working with community members, we might want to look at actually scheduling or trying to identify locations and a time frame for those types of projects, whether they're murals or otherwise. And then one other idea was that, oh, actually, no, I should have crossed this out. Sorry. The other idea was actually then morphed into holding some kind of a meeting, town hall meeting or something like that, to get community input. And then we finally decided that we are going to set a monthly meeting. We're just putting it on the calendar so that the Community Engagement Task Force meets monthly, so that we don't end up going for a month or 2 months or however long without actually trying to continue to make progress. And finally, I'll just remind this this committee that Melanie joined the Peace Education program and community engagement committee of the museum. And the museum is doing a lot of parallel work around community engagement and actually has participation from the Office of Community Engagement already. So there will be meetings. For example, just last week, Melanie and I were in a meeting with Danielle from the Office of Community Engagement and a number of other people who serve on the museums committee. And we're talking about some parallel ideas. So we'll probably come back with some other recommendations or presentation of opportunities for some partnerships. And I think that pretty much wraps up my report. And I also need to apologize because it's 5 o'clock and I actually have to sign off in just a couple of minutes. So thank you.
Jeff, I think we're close to the end of this meeting. If you can stick around through department reports, then we can still have a meeting. If you leave, we have to adjourn.
Okay, I can hang on for a few more minutes. I'll stop talking so we can go fast.
Well, thank you, Jeff. That I was going to give a quick report out on project development. And I think a lot of the suggestions that you put in place, I took notes on as how they can also influence the work that we do for project development. So I'll leave that there. But thank you. Good talking points for a future meeting. Next, I'll move to Tara again for department reports.
Great. I wanted to try to squeeze this in because it's exciting. I wanted to preview for you the new Out There Santa Rosa website, which we've been working on for the last several months, and invite you all to the official launch of our new website and our new Out There Santa Rosa brand this Sunday in Courthouse Square from 1 to 3. So I'm going to share my screen and get this up for you. Hold on a second. Okay, so first things first, this is your official invite to our dance party, April 10th, 1 to 3 p.m. Courthouse Square. Celebrate the launch of the new Insider's Guide to What's Out There in Santa Rosa. And here is our, did that switch over? Can you see this map now? Okay. So this is a preview of the new Out There Santa Rosa website. We have been working with a local firm, Studio B, and a variety of artists and neighborhood insiders. We're calling them outside insiders, out there insiders, to come up with a, like the thing said, the Insider's Guide to What's Out There in Santa Rosa. So this map was created by an artist to give a, a unique view of Santa Rosa in terms of what's iconic, what's out there, the hidden things you might find, kind of help to name certain areas, certain neighborhoods, and what you might see there. This map is interactive, so if you click on downtown, for instance, it takes you to this map, which then shows you kind of like those boundaries of the areas. And then if you click on those, it will take you to all of the components of our website, which are art, music, eat, drink, active, and wildcard in that neighborhood. So you can search by neighborhood on what you might be able to find in that neighborhood. So for instance, downtown, Courthouse Square is the center of downtown. Restaurants, bars, and shops line the square. Catch many of the events happening here. So then you can look for whatever you might want to see here. You can sort by category. You can search by BIPOC owned, LGBTQI owned, women owned. Sorry, that was not smooth. Anyway, it gives you an idea of what you might be able to see there. If you want to search just by the category itself and not by the neighborhood, you can do so up above, or you can get to it from the main page as well. So for instance, there's a really awesome art page that they've put together, which includes artists, art venues, happenings, public art that you might see. Our art walk, our downtown art walk is on the site. When you click on one of these, like this is one of our mural artists doing the Fifth Street Parking Garage project, you'll see examples of their work. And then we always include a quote from someone who's one of our insiders, and then just a link to their website. So we're not really talking a lot at you. We're just showing you what they do and directing you directly to that person. If you want to go to eat or drink, you've got all the variety of places you can think of. Each category has its own look. So like you'll notice the different kind of design motifs as you see each section. Music has its own look. So once this is live, you'll be able to explore this all on your own. And I encourage you to. There's over 150 listings here on the site, all different, all found right here in Santa Rosa. So under music, you'll find individual groups, individual musicians, but you also find venues, and a lot of them are pop-up venues like bars or restaurants that have occasional events. Yeah, so it's pretty awesome. You can also search by neighborhood, like I said, from this drop-down menu as well as from that map. And we've really tried to give each flavor, each neighborhood its own flavor, and have the things that you might be able to see in those neighborhoods, but also sorted in the variety of categories that we have. So this is what we are celebrating on Sunday, on the 10th. So we invite you to come out and join us as we launch this. And I'm really excited about how the public art program will be visible through this site, and we'll be continuing to work with our team to reshuffle this and update it on a monthly basis so that it's constantly changing and there's more to see every time you come and look. So that is what my department report is. It's not exactly the public art program, but it's something else that's within our economic development division that I'm directly involved with.
Great. Thank you, Tara. And then for our information,
great.
is the launch happening on Sunday?
Yes, Sunday, Courthouse Square, 1 to 3.
But so is that, sorry, does the launch of the website also take place on Sunday?
Correct.
Okay.
I'm not sure exactly when they're going to make it go live. It might be before that event. It might be during that event, it might be after that event. But yeah, the goal is that the site will be live on Sunday at some point, but we are also having an event to celebrate.
Thanks.
It looks great.
It does.
Yeah. I just want to make a quick comment. Melanie and I were looking at the Petaluma Public Art website just to kind of get a sense of, well, just kind of poking around at other cities and what they do. I had no idea you were building this website. So I'm really, really happy to see it because it looks really dynamic and as good as the public art website for Petaluma looks, this looks like a whole lot more fun.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah.
All right. Well, in interest of time today, I will adjourn our meeting this afternoon, and we'll stay tuned for our next Art in Public Places meeting in May. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you
you,
all.
everybody.
Discussion.
Bye-bye.
Bye.